Hello, good evening and welcome. Season's greetings to round 13 of the Nations Cup. I am Chris Kavanagh, your host for the series, and we are drawing ever closer to the end of this championship. Only 3 rounds to go and things are getting very, very dicey in both divisions. And where better to come than Autodromo José Carlos Pace circuit in Interlagos, São Paulo, Brazil. A location which has seen a lot of drama in multiple formulae, most notably in Formula 1, the amount of season-ending situations which have been very, very dramatic and very, very chaotic. And we feel like here could bring the same kind of spice. So, let's get into it, shall we? To begin with Division 2, let's see how the standings are looking coming into the weekend. Pato O'Ward leads the way on 190 points ahead of a rival for a long time in this season, Felix Rosenqvist, only 4 behind on 186. Sebastian Buemi, another close contender on 19, and things drop away a little bit with Magnussen on 152. Will Power, 137 with his teammate Jeremy Winkup in 136 points. Arthur Leclerc had a bit of a rough time of late on 133. Raffaele Marcello not living up to quite how Sebastian Buemi does things at 130. Felipe Albuquerque at 115. Robert Wickens of Canada at 111. Christian Lundgaard of Denmark 108. Antonio Felix da Costa 104. Antonio Giovinazzi on 93 points. And then Roman De Angelis, the other Canadian driver, at 88 points. Felipe Nasr for Brazil, hoping to get some results here in Interlagos on 85 points. Stefan Rakami at 73, Fuoco 72, Marcus Ericsson on 59, Van der Linde, first of South Africa's at 42, Sasha Fenestraz at 38, Rafael Gomez 37, Paul O'Reilly 36, Camara 34, Nico Barone 31 points, then Sheldon Van der Linde on 26, James Hinchcliffe on 18, and then going on the lower orders, Felipe Drogovic of Brazil on 10 points, and the rest of the field, Mahavir Grunthar on 10, and then Senna 9, Ragalia 2, and Narain Karthikeyan still on 0. And now we look at the nation's standings. Switzerland are somewhat in front, keeping teams up at an arm's length in this championship. Australia on only 28 points behind on 273. Denmark in 3rd place on 260, but Sweden are knocking on the door to see if they can get into that final promotion spot. But they're in 4th. Then we have Mexico in 5th place, 227 points. And we have Portugal 219, Canada 217, Monaco 206, Italy 201, Brazil 138, Argentina on 71, a bit disappointing for them, South Africa on 68, and then India just on 10. With all of that now out of the way, we can see what the grid looks like for the sprint. Sebastian Buemi is on pole for the sprint, along with Felipe Albuquerque in 2nd, Christian Lundgaard in 3rd, and then Rafael Marcello in 4th, Jeremy Winkup in 5th, Will Power in 6th, Felix Rosenqvist, one of the championship contenders, in 7th place, Robert Wickens in 8th, Roman De Angelis in 9th, Kevin Magnussen in 10th, and then we have Antonio Felix Costa in 11th, Marcus Ericsson Sweden in 12th, Arthur Leclerc in 13th, and then Pato O'Ward, the championship leader, in 14th, a bit of a disappointing qualifying there, Antonio Fuoco in 15th, Sheldon Van der Linde in 16th, Stefan Rakami for Monaco in 17th, Antonio Giovinazzi in 18th, Nico Barone 19th, Kelvin Van der Linde 20th, Rafael Gomez for Mexico in 21st, and then the 2 Brazilians of Felipe Nasr and Felipe Drogovic in 22nd and 23rd, not very optimistic for them and their results here. Then Sasha Fenestraz at 24th, and then we have both India cars at 25th and 26th, Mahavir Raghunathan and Narain Karthikeyan. And now for the first race of the day, it is over to Ryan Ferris.
Here we are in Interlagos for the Division 2 sprint race, my apologies. Here just before Christmas, who's going to be getting an early Christmas present this weekend as the lights go off? And it's Buemi on pole and away from Albuquerque. Albuquerque takes an early lead off the line. A great start there from Albuquerque. In the background as well, that looks like Lundgaard diving down the inside, so he's taken first position into the Senna S's. In the background, that looks like Marcello battering away with Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist in the championship hunt with these final 3 rounds to go. But it's a great getaway from Lundgaard. Albuquerque as well. Will Power in the background making a move on his teammates into the Desquida de Largo. And around they come. A few people tripping up over each other, and that's the 2 Argentinian cars. That's Sasha Fenestraz. And Fuoco's got an issue already. He's lost his front wing. Now I think that is probably, he's gone wide at Desquida de Largo, and there's quite some hefty curbs on the outside of that corner exit. A lot of the drivers have been complaining of it, and it has caused damage to the Italian driver's car. But back at the front, it's Christian Lundgaard who comes through the Zhengzhou for the first time, ahead of Albuquerque. So Albuquerque back up at the front once again. He's made a few sporadic appearances up in this position, with Buemi in third, Marcello in fourth, and Rosenqvist in fifth. Championship leader O'Ward down in 13th position, so this is critical stuff for the Mexican. So, first lap completed. Only a few minor issues in that opening lap, and in the background you've got Buemi going down the inside of Albuquerque. Well, in the meantime, Rosenqvist, more crucially, down the inside of Marcello. So up into fourth position is the Swedish driver, who is only sitting a few points off of O'Ward in the championship, and it looks like potentially, if O'Ward continues to not have the best of performances in this sprint race, could find himself somewhere closer, if not leading the championship, going into the feature later on. But Albuquerque has fallen behind Buemi, and Buemi is going to go after, as we look back to O'Ward in 13th position. Currently not scoring, so only the top 10 that score in the sprint race. Buemi sets the fastest lap of the race, and he is chasing after Lundgaard. Obviously Buemi still in championship contention, but a little bit further off the mark, as Da Costa goes down the inside of Wickens for 10th position and is on his way to score a point. You've got the two Canadian cars in the background. It looks as though Wickens is struggling for pace in these early laps. He's got De Angelis all over the back of him. You can see down the inside at the Seguido de Largo, and that is job done there. So back at the front, Lundgaard still leads from 0.8 of a second to Buemi. Albuquerque just behind. Here's Fuoco, who's pitted for a new front wing but is having some form of failure. So not a good day at the office so far for Fuoco. And breaks another front wing for good measure. So Fuoco out, transmission failure. That's been the issue for most of the drivers this season when it comes to technical failures. Yellow flags are out, and Lundgaard still leading quite comfortably at the moment, although it's 7 tenths between himself and Buemi. But Buemi not really making any major inroads into Lundgaard at the moment. But they are starting to pull away from Albuquerque, who's under pressure now from Rosenqvist, and Rosenqvist is through up into third position. And Marcello's also on the charge. Is he going to go down the inside? And that's going to be a brave move down the inside there. I didn't think that was going to happen at Ferradura, but still Albuquerque just about hangs on to that fourth place. This is allowing Will Power to catch up onto the back of these guys. Out through these tight, twisty corners. Setup has played a big part in the results in qualifying, at least. As we look back to Rosenqvist in third position, who's going after now, as Drugovic looks to be having an issue with electronics, and that's not a good thing for the home hero. As we look further on, and this is Marcello still trying to find a way past Felipe Albuquerque. And he looks to be closing now, and he's going to have a go as they come down the Retro-Reposta into the Seguido de Largo, and that looks to be job done for Marcello. So fourth position, he's now going to see if he can go after Rosenqvist. Obviously Marcello not in the championship fight, but he can help his teammate here if he can catch and pass Rosenqvist. So Lundgaard's still in the lead. He's still holding on to that fairly consistent 7 to 8 tenth advantage over Buemi. Buemi just about hanging on to the slipstream of Lundgaard. So they climb back up the hill and over the crest into the start-finish straight and back into the Senna S's once again, where we've seen quite a few dive bombs over the years. As in the background, talking about dive bombs, here goes De Angelis on Magnussen. So De Angelis up into 10th position. And Giovinazzi, well, they're going to be worrying about their supply of wings at the moment in the Team Italia squad, because that's 3 front wings that are broken now for Team Italy, with Giovinazzi now pitting to have one replaced. And Power behind. So that's Wing Cup, I think. But still at the front, Lundgaard, and it's still pretty much saying the same throughout sector to sector. It's yo-yoing between 7 to 8 tenths, but look at who's in the background. That is Rosenqvist catching Buemi. And Buemi's having to work very hard to try and keep up with Lundgaard, stay in the slipstream. You can see down the start-finish straight, comes down to 6 tenths. Now, Wing Cup under pressure now from De Angelis, and De Angelis goes through as we look to Marcello, who's pretty much on his own there. But it looks as though potentially, if we come through the next sector as we do now, well, Buemi loses a tenth to Lundgaard, but still pretty much staying the same at the front. Rosenqvist, however, is now within that important second of Buemi. Now, he would definitely be getting a slipstream as long as he can stay close enough to Buemi through these tight, twisty sections. And that's Van der Linde going off, losing his front wing. So another driver falling foul to the curbs here in Interlagos. He's got Felipe Nasser going around the outside of him. He's got his own brother having to go around the outside of him as well. He's going to have to take it easy and stay out of trouble as he has to limp not too far back to pit lane, thankfully. But that's pretty much his race done for the day. And he's going to have to hope he can have some better luck in the feature race later. So back as we see Da Costa looking to shape up a move down the inside of Will Power. So 7th position for Da Costa, and he's been making his way through the field all race. And De Angelis already trying to challenge or take advantage of the wounded Will Power in this situation, but not quite close enough. Ferragura, you've got to be very committed to make a move there. Sometimes Bico de Pato is another opportunity, although we haven't seen too much going on in that middle sector. It's mostly been Turn 1 and Ferragura, Descido de Larga that we've seen most of the moves done. But De Angelis, who potentially didn't have the best of qualifying, but he's making up for it here in the race as he's in the slipstream. But it seems like Power has got a little bit more straight line speed over the Canadian. And you can see as soon as I get into the corners, obviously the Team Canada car a little bit more downforce, and he's in the slipstream. He's definitely making a move into Descido de Larga, and through he goes. So 7th position now for De Angelis. And he is well and truly picking everyone off one by one as we go further on up the front. the gap has actually come down between Lundgaard and Buemi. It's now 6 tenths for the first time during this middle sector. We've seen it down as low as that across the line on the start-finish straight. But look who's in the background of Rosenqvist now. Rosenqvist is now coming under attack from Marcello. So we've got a 4-way battle at the front. So Lundgaard over the start-finish straight they come. And there's a bit of a slipstream train coming on as we see Will Power under pressure now from his own teammate Whincup, who's going to come down the inside as he into turn 1. He's very, very close now. Here he comes. And they're side by side and through goes Whincup, but Power's going to fight back, but he can't do so. And Power, who, well, looked to have the pace to start off with in this race, seems to be rapidly fading as he's now back under pressure now from Magnussen. So Magnussen brings himself back up into the points. Now, can Power regroup? Push through whatever issue he's having? Is it a tyre issue? Is it will the car come to him towards the end of the race? We'll soon find out. But here's De Angelis on to his next victim. And this time it's De Costa, and he's got Ericsson just in front of him as well. So down the start-finish straight again. Highest point of the circuit and definite opportunity for slipstream and a pass into turn 1, but nothing happens this time round. But De Angelis has been very good at firing the car off of the S's around Curva del Sol. But not quite close enough to challenge into Descida del Lago this time round. And that's the front wing gone for Rosenqvist. So Rosenqvist was in pretty much dead cert position as it stood to take the lead of this championship, and he's now just broken his front wing. He's going to have to get back to pit lane and he'll be out of the points. Meanwhile, O'Ward, who's not too far off of Will Power, potentially is going to creep his way into the points now, and this is Kevin van der Linde who's gone off again. So off into the wall is Calvin van der Linde, and a not a good day for Team South Africa, but a heavy hit there, and hopefully he'll be okay for the feature race and they'll get the car sorted in time. But meanwhile, Raffaele Marcello, as a result of Rosenqvist having his issues, is now into third position. Rosenqvist in pit lane and plummeting down the order. Whilst all that was going on, you just saw there De Costa going through into 5th place ahead of Ericsson. He's now got De Angelis all over the back of him, and he's going to be looking to have a move here down into Descida del Lago. And here he comes, he pops out down the inside, and through goes De Angelis. Once again, 6th position there for the Canadian. And what an amazing drive he's had so far. He's started from outside the top 10, he's been climbing his way up through the order, and has his sights set now on De Costa for 5th position. Meanwhile, Buemi, who's actually lost a little bit of time to Lundgaard now. The gap we did see come down to 6 tenths, it's now 9 tenths. Still just about keeping in touch with Lundgaard. Further on back, this is Villagomez, who's looking back at Fenestraz, and this is 17th and 18th position. Team Mexico really struggling, and the gearbox has gone for Rosenqvist as well, so if it doesn't rain, it pours for the Swedish driver. Another front wing broken once again. But what was looking like, this morning in today's race, the opportunity of taking the lead of that Drivers' Championship Luckily for him, at the moment, O'Ward is not due to score. But I feel with the decline in pace for Will Power, there is possibility that O'Ward could at least steal 1 point in today's sprint. Obviously, more points dished out for the feature race later. But this is looking even better now for Buemi, who's a fair few points off of the lead in the championship, but this does still keep me in play as it stands at the moment. Team Switzerland will also be due to extend their advantage in the constructors table. But Buemi, who's fallen away now, actually briefly fell away from that crucial 1 second advantage to Lundgaard, but he's just about dipped inside it as they crumb across the line once again. But it's Lundgaard still leading. And he's not put a foot wrong all race so far, although I hope that's not putting a cursor on him, as Magnussen now dives down the inside of Whincup. So that's 8th position now for Magnussen. And Magnussen, who earlier found himself exiting the top 10, he's managed to fight his way back in and is currently sat in 8th position. So good comeback drive there, or regroup from Magnussen. But I think so far, the drive of the race so far, some may pick Lundgaard because he's not, as I said, not put a foot wrong since taking the lead at the first corner. Brilliant getaway. But obviously we see De Angelis making those brilliant moves up through the field. Currently sitting in 6th position and not too far off the back of Da Costa. So still, with a few laps remaining, there's still opportunity. Raghunathan, well, he's just here making up the numbers essentially, although Karthikeyan is some near 6 seconds behind. A little less than that, but still a lacklustre performance from Team India once again, as we've come to expect so far this season. They had the one race weekend where it seemed they woke up, but that was about it so far this season. Still, Lundgaard pushing ahead, or is it a case of Buemi slowing down? But here's Albuquerque in trouble, and he has also lost his front wing. So that, as he's going to have to limp back to pit lane, will put O'Ward in the championship points. And De Angelis has also got through into Costa, so he's up into 4th position now, with Albuquerque having his front wing issue. But only a few laps remaining, and fairly comfortable at the moment for Lundgaard. He's extended his advantage over Buemi. It's now just over a second, albeit 5,000ths over a second, but he's now adding to it. But here is De Angelis, who's not managed to shake off Da Costa, so I feel Da Costa could be having a bit of a fight back here for this 4th position, with only a couple laps left in this race. But nonetheless, a brilliant performance so far from the Canadian. But by the looks of things, with Da Costa still hanging on to the back of him, it's not over yet. So across the line to complete 16 laps of 18. Further on back, Power back into the points now as a result of other people's issues, and O'Ward is actually now up into 9th. So actually I think O'Ward's managed to find his way past Power So that's going to secure him a couple of points now for O'Ward, extend his advantage to Rosenqvist in the championship. And that's Ericsson retiring. So a double DNF. And it's another gearbox failure. So 2 gearbox failures there for Team Sweden in this sprint race. And only with a few laps remaining. And Ericsson was in a very good position as well. He was going to score some decent points for the team. And that's Wickens off. So Wickens off from he was in 10th position when he went off, so through, and was he tapped from behind there? There's a weird reaction there from the car, and that was at the S's section. But he's rejoined, albeit outside of the points, ahead of Nico Verone, and Leclerc is up into 11th, and Verone's challenging here for the position ahead of Wickens. Obviously Wickens has probably done some damage to his tyres, but this is the final lap that we have now started. Lundgaard comfortably ahead of Buemi. He's dropped Buemi now. The elastic band has well and truly snapped, and it's 1.2 seconds effectively between Lundgaard and Buemi. Marcello not too far behind, and Albuquerque with those fresh tyres and a new front wing sets the fastest lap of the race. So just around the last few corners to go. It's Maguglia, then it's the junction, and the climb back up the hill. And one more time up the hill in the background, actually, the 2 Swiss cars very, very close. But it's going to be too late for them as Lundgaard comes across the line to win the Sao Paulo Division 2 sprint race in a truly dominant fashion. Buemi and Marcello comes across 2nd and 3rd. And De Angelis 4th with that brilliant drive through the field. O'Ward manages to finish 8th and secure a few championship points to his name in this sprint race. Verone just ahead of Wickens, and Wickens will be furious that he's missed out on a point there. We didn't quite catch whether it was driver error or not, but nonetheless, not a happy Canadian. Across the line comes Raghunathan. We're just waiting on Karthikeyan, who's under pressure now from Giovinazzi. So Giovinazzi, who had to pit for a new front wing, has come out of pit lane and caught Karthikeyan, who hasn't even pitted. Drugovich over the line to be the final driver to be classified. And confirmation of the results, Christian Lundgaard wins ahead of Sebastian Buemi and Raffaele Marcello in 3rd. Roman De Angelis with that brilliant drive through the pack finishes 4th ahead of Felix da Costa. Kevin Magnussen was 6th with Jamie Whincup in 7th. Pato O'Ward securing 8th position ahead of Will Power in 9th. And Stefan Rakelmi sneaking through into 10th position. Arthur Leclerc was 11th ahead of Nico Verone, and Robert Wickens finished 13th. Further on down at the field, Felipe Nasr finished 14th ahead of Rafael Villagomez in 15th. Fenestraz was 16th. Albuquerque finishing 17th after the front wing damage. Raghunathan 18th. Karthikeyan 19th. Giovinazzi 20th, with Sheldon van der Linde in 21st, and the Felipe Drugovich in 22nd. Marcus Ericsson was classified but finished 2 laps down, and onto the retirements. Crucially, Felix Rosenqvist with the transmission failure. Electrical failure was Calvin van der Linde's issue, although he did have the accident, and Antonio Fuoco also out with a transmission failure. So after all that, it's now back over to Chris.
gut-wrenching stuff there for Felix Rosenqvist there, having retired. But the consolation he has for him is that at least Pato O'Ward didn't get a heck of a lot of points after that race, but well done to Christian Lundgaard putting himself where he needed to be. Very tricky conditions out there, so he did a very good job, as did both the Swiss cars, to keep themselves alive. But now we can look ahead to Division 1, where things are equally as interesting and dicey. Looking at the tables going into the weekend, Philip Hanson leads the way on 165 points, but it's very, very close, right until about, well, how close to, about probably to 10th. Simon Pagenaud is only 4 behind. Naoki Yamamoto himself is only 11 behind. Scott Dixon and Shane Van Gisbergen are 13 and 16 points behind, respectively. Alex Palou is only 18 behind, as well as Rene Rast, who's been on good form of late. Stoffel Van Dorn has really been on fire in the last few races, only 37 behind. When you think about it, with how many races there are to go, that is quite close. Sandy Stuvik trailing off a little bit, 46 behind. Nick De Vries 51 behind, and then we have Kamui Kobayashi on 102 points with Joseph Newgarden, and then Paul Di Resta sticking around with that Scottish car on 91 points. Sebastian Bourdais, not as good as his teammate at France, but 79 points, still good nonetheless. Daniel Nugget, same thing could be said for him actually, with Alex Palou's efforts. He's on 74, along with Robin Fryans on 74. Alex Dunn for Ireland on 71. Carl Larson on 68. Dries Van Toor on 54. Andre Lotterer on 45. Elfyn Evans on 44 for Wales. James Collado, quite a drop off compared to his teammate on 43. Jack Aitken on 42. Max Hart on 34. Natalie Wetana-Varigor on 25. Ella Lloyd on 22, and then further down the order we've got a lot of drivers here who aren't taking part anymore, but the one driver of note is Nick Heidfeld for Germany, currently racing. He's on 9 points. And now we can look at the constructors, or nations, standings for Division 1. New Zealand 301 points, again a bit like Switzerland in Division 2, keeping teams at arm's length at 40 points ahead of Japan. And then France on 240, 61 back. And then we've got Spain on 221, Germany on 212, England on 208, the Netherlands on 191, with Belgium on 183, USA on 170. And then looking at the relegation battle, Thailand and Scotland are very close to each other, 144 to 133 respectively, only 11 between those two. And then a bit of a way to Ireland, 105, and then Wales in last on 66. A few driver changes to mention, however, at Team Ireland. Martin Donnelly helped step in as a reserve to help Max Hart do his one-round ban. That's now been served, so Max Hart is now back in the car. And then at Team Belgium, an official change. Dries Van Toor is out. Charles Weerts, who is a young and up-and-coming driver, he's now in for the remaining races of the season. And then over at Team Spain, Pepe Marti stepped in for Junker Dare for his one-round ban. Junker Dare has done that now, so he is now back in the car. And with all them done, we can now look at the Division 1 sprint grid. Newgarden for United States of America starts on pole. Alex Palou for Spain in a handy spot there in second place. James Collado in third. Kamui Kobayashi in fourth. Simon Pagenaud in fifth. Daniel Nugget in sixth. And then Stoffel Van Dorn in seventh. Philip Hansen, the championship leader, in eighth. Naoki Yamamoto in ninth. Rene Rast in 10th. Sebastian Bourdais in 11th place. Charles Weerts for his first race in the Nations Cup in 12th. Nick Heidfeld in 13th. Robin Fryans in 14th. Elfyn Evans for Wales in 15th. Carl Kirkwood in 16th. And then the two Kiwi cars in 17th and 18th. Van Gisbergen and Dixon. It seems like their setup choice might have been the wrong one here, going for quite a top speed choice, it appears. It could be balance performance as well, but nevertheless, Nick De Vries in 19th, Alex Dunn in 20th, Ella Lloyd in 21st, Sandy Stuvik in 22nd, Max Hart in 23rd, Paul Di Resta in 24th, Jack Aitken in 25th, and then Natalie Wetana-Varigor in last on 26th. And now for the Division 1 sprint, it is back to Ryan Ferris.
Well, the Division 2 race provided us with some chaos and carnage. What more can Division 1 give us, with 18 points separating the top 7 in the championship? It's getting close with the last 3 rounds of the season, and it's away. Great start from Palou. Joseph Newgarden still in the lead, but who's this going down the inside? It's Kamui Kobayashi, is it? And Kobayashi tries to tough it out into the lead, but no, Newgarden holds on. There's a lock-up in the background, 3 cars abreast. And it looked to be one of the New Zealand cars almost going off track, but it is Newgarden who leads from Kobayashi, but Kobayashi's fighting back on him. Newgarden still trying to hang on, but through Into the lead goes Kobayashi. Palou manages to get third position. Pagenaud drops back into fourth. And a brilliant getaway from the Japanese driver. So around through the S's. Up into Bico de Pato, and we're looking back now at Palou, who's coming under pressure now a little bit from Pagenaud from behind. James Collado up in 5th position. We don't usually see, or we haven't seen Collado running towards the front for a while. Stuvik has had an issue with the front wing. Again, the very sharp and aggressive curves into Lagos claiming another victim. But it's a brilliant getaway there from Kobayashi. Further in the background, Collado under pressure now from Van Dorn, who goes up into 5th position. And a great move there. And you can see further up ahead, Pagenaud now pressing on Palou, and is going to go for a move now into Decido de Lago. And is he going to make the move stick? Yes, he does. So that is 3rd position now for the Frenchman. And Philip Hanson, is that an issue there for Hanson, or is he just being passed there by Yamamoto? So Yamamoto up into 9th, and that definitely looks like an issue there for Hanson, who's dropping back positions. And that is not good for his championship prospects. Now Hanson's got pretty much most of the lap to try and get the car back. Can he get the car back? As he's slipping through the field. Dixon down in 21st position. Being told that Team New Zealand got it completely wrong on the setup this weekend, and what is turning to be a potential crucial weekend as we're coming down to crunch time in the championship. But Kobayashi continuing to extend that lead as Sandy Stuvik has a bit of a lock-up. Another driver who's used to being towards the front, but it seems as though the wrong setup was chosen. I think a lot of teams opting for a top speed setup, forgetting how tight and twisty and technical that middle sector really is here in Interlagos, which has cost them quite a bit in lap time. Yamamoto falling backwards now. Is there an issue there for the Japanese driver? There is an issue. There's half his front wing missing. So our pole sitter, not quite pole sitter, his front row sitter for the feature race later on, already coming into trouble now on what is the 3rd lap of the race. Again, another driver falling victim to the curves of Decido de Lago, but one who's not falling foul to anything at the moment, although I was about to say that, and he does a lock-up straight at the Senna S's there. But 1.5 seconds ahead of Newgarden, still with the fastest lap of the race. Here is Stoffel Van Dorn, who's eating into the advantage of Pagenaud in 3rd position. Meanwhile, Collado going through on Juncker-Dare. No, Palou. So Palou going backwards now at the moment. And Juncker-Dare has managed to come through up into 5th position. Meanwhile, Palou has got Roman Friends for company. But still at the front, Kobayashi, he's actually lost a bit of time to Newgarden. Gap has now come down to 1.1 seconds. But is he going to take a leaf out of Lundgaard's book? Didn't quite manage to take the lead into turn 1, but he fought hard enough for it and did it a little bit later on. But you have Newgarden and Pagenaud, and here's Friends down the inside of Palou. And Friends takes that 7th position. Or does he? Palou fights back. Brilliant stuff there from the Spaniard. And really well affected below there. Friends there, and he's now going to find himself under attack from Charles Wirtz. Wirtz, who's now in the car. Obviously, it was Dreesan Thor who was in that car initially for the first part of the season. But the team management over for the Belgian team has opted for another fairly young GT3 driver. So back at the front, and it is Kobayashi still leading as they come across to complete lap 5 of 18. And he's still keeping that advantage fairly constant at 1.3 seconds ahead of Newgarden, but Pagenaud not too far behind, but again outside, and that's slowing there for, I didn't quite catch who that was, one of the Team Germany cars, and it's René Rast. So gearbox gone for René Rast, one of the championship contenders. Rast, who was actually leading the championship at one point, but he's now fallen back, and he's going to fall back a little bit more, I think, as he grinds to a halt. But further on back through the field now, interestingly, at the moment, not only is there a championship battle going up, but there's a relegation battle going on. Crucially, at the moment, the big fight is between Team Scotland and Team... What was the other team involved? It's actually it's Lee Wataragu who's in that team. And this is Pagenaud now coming under increasing pressure now. If we're actually that's ball, yeah, it is. So Van Dorn through on Pagenaud for third position, and it was Team Thailand. Sorry, so Team Thailand and Team Scotland are the main battle at the moment for that final relegation spot or final position to stay in the Division 1. Still at the front and extended advantage. You need to take another 3 attempts out of Newgarden. Is Kobayashi, so it looks as though he's going to emulate what we saw Lundgaard do, as long as the car can hold together. Collado 6th position, having a little bit of an issue going through Zhengzhou. It comes up through the twisty or winding, ever curving straight, and then back down the hill, down the centre S's. An absolute brilliant circuit this is here in Interlagos. One of my personal favourites. And as always, as it has done in real life, it's doing the same here in the Nations Cup. It is providing drama to this championship in both Division 1 so far and Division 2, and there's still the feature races left later on. So Pagenaud's out, so Pagenaud, and he's spun off into the barriers. So after being passed by Van Dorn for that third position, trying to find his way back through on Van Dorn has gone off, and that was at Ferradura, a very, very fast right-hander. And again, hopefully he's going to be okay for the feature race later, but that's again a costly mistake in the championship. So that releases Van Dorn with no pressure from behind at the moment. Daniel Juncadella is the next car behind, but he is some distance behind. So now he can set about going after Newgarden. And with 10 laps remaining, potentially, depending on his pace, may be able to go after Kobayashi. But Kobayashi doing a stellar job out front at the moment. 2.1 seconds is the gap. Van Dorn hunting after Newgarden here. Just over a second away from Newgarden. Van Dorn, who hasn't raced the whole calendar so far, wasn't picked, to many people's amazement, wasn't picked for the early part of the season, so he's managing to bring his way into this championship battle, but we all think he should probably be a little bit further up. But it's ifs, buts and maybes. As Kobayashi still continues very calmly in that lead position ahead of Newgarden. And Newgarden still just able to keep over a second as Palou goes out wide there, but luckily for him doesn't cause any damage to that front wing that seems to be very fragile this weekend. But that is going to put him under increasing pressure from Romain Frijns behind. Got Charles Weerts as well, who is pretty much glued to the back end of Frijns. As you can see here, not able to find a way through. There's Bourdais, and there's Elfyn Evans. 10th position, good result so far for Team Wales, although I fear this is not going to be enough for him to stay, or the team to stay up, unless they have a miracle last few races. The Team Wales team has had moments of brilliance during the season. They just haven't managed to make it work all season long, and this is why they've found themselves in the relegation spots. And here's Weerts down the inside of Frijns and makes it stick into the Decido de Largo. And this is a brilliant performance from the Belgian, who is now going to set about going after Alex Palou, one of the championship hopefuls. So great stuff from the newbie, although as I say that, a slight lock up there coming through the Pinarino hairpin, one of the slowest corners on the track. But now up the hill and continues to accelerate through the gears, but not quite close enough to get any form of slipstream from Palou up ahead, so it may put him under some pressure from Frijns from behind with that slight lock up. Still out in the lead, continuing to extend. 2.5 seconds is the gap to Newgarden, but more importantly, Van Dorn is starting to close that gap between himself and Newgarden for that second position. And as I say that, here we are. They come up through Ferradura, and as you can see, Van Dorn definitely getting closer to the Team USA car. I don't think he's going to quite have the pace if he does catch and pass Newgarden. I don't think he's going to have the pace to catch Kobayashi unless something goes wrong for Kobayashi. But still, once again, another lap ticks off. And what's this? This is an issue. And it's Van Dorn. He's failing. Gearbox failure for the Belgian. And this is what was turning out to be a brilliant result here for the Belgian. It's the pesky gearbox. Once again, another failure. If it's not a front wing, it's a gearbox. As his teammate, Charles Wirtz, goes down the inside of Palou, I think that is. And indeed it is. And Palou fights back once again. So Palou actually doing very well. That's two times he's been overtaken into the centre S, and 2 times he's managed to take that position back. But it's going to hold him up. And here is Frijns under attack now from Bourdais. So where he's been slowed by Wirtz and Palou battling in front, Bourdais has managed to seize the opportunity and take that 7th position away from Frijns. But Palou, by luck really from cars failing in front of him, is managing to find himself into 5th position. And not too many championship contenders, if there are actually, ahead of him. He's got Wirtz behind him, who's, new to the championship. So the only thing for him really is that he'll be taking a potential point away from him in this sprint race. But it looks as though Frijns is not finished yet with Bourdais after that overtake. Obviously wrong-footed by the 2 battling in front of him, but he's going to come back at him now as they come down the rest of Riposta. Is he going to pull out? Yes, he is, and goes down the inside and takes that position back off of Bourdais. In the background also, we had Heidfeld going through on Evans, and he's now on the back end of Bourdais. Is he lining up a move into Ferriguro? I mean, you do have to be brave to pull something off there, and Heidfeld, with his years of knowledge and experience, thinks better of it. And Stuvik with an issue, electrical issue there for Stuvik. And it's not been a good day at all for Team Thailand. Definitely the wrong setup direction, and I think the pain is only just going to get worse into the feature race later. Evans, who's looking to try and line up Heidfeld, but not quite got the pace. And for a moment then, I thought that was Kobayashi going slow, but it was just the camera pulling its tricks on me as he continues to extend his advantage, actually, on Newgarden. 3.4 seconds is the advantage as Wirtz continues to pull his way through the field. That's 5th position off of Palou. Finally, so a great debut for the Belgian driver. So here is Daniel Junkadea in 3rd position, a fairly lonely 3rd position. He's some 5 seconds, I believe, if my maths is correct, off of 2nd position, and the rest of the field even further back. But here is De Resta in 17th position. Struggling as well, again, not particularly, or potentially not the right setup direction for Team Scotland. But tricky conditions indeed, but still Newgarden doing well there in 2nd position. He's still holding on to that pace, although he's not able to emulate what Kobayashi has managed to do in this race, but he's still been, as that's Bourdais going off and spins into the barriers. So Bourdais, who was starting to find his way up through the field, has spun off, and that's actually brought De Vries into the points and has retired now. So went off and stalled in the gravel trap. And that would be no points for Bourdais. And no points actually for Team France, because obviously Pagenaud going out as well. Further on back, this is New Zealand, who are again another team who have been struggling for setup this weekend, and in a crucial part of the championship. It seems Interlagos circuit has thrown a real spanner in the works for the teams fighting for the championship. It's actually opened the door for some of the teams who have been struggling all season, because it has been a bit of an equaliser this race. It's probably the first race that that comes to mind that has been very split in the direction that teams have gone for in the setup. But up the hill once again, Kobayashi comes to start the final lap of the race, and has so far done it in dominant style. What is the gap across the line? It is 4.2 seconds, so a far more dominant display compared to Lundgaard, although Lundgaard pretty much managed it perfectly in the Division 2 race. Kobayashi just with a little bit more track knowledge, having raced here before in World Endurance and in Formula 1 itself. Further back, here's Van Gisbergen knocking on the points. He's got De Vries just in front of him. Is he going to be able to make a move on this final lap? Obviously with the incidents up ahead, that's promoted Evans into 9th position. Charles Weerts 5th position, so another standout performance. We had De Angelis in the Div 2 race, and now we have Weerts in the Div 1 race. So coming round out of Zhengzhou one final time and up the hill, here comes Kamui Kobayashi to come across the line and win here in the sprint race of Sao Paulo in a dominant fashion. Brilliant drive there, brilliant getaway. Almost had the lead into turn 1, but managed to get it back just further around. Juncker finishes 3rd, just behind Newgarden, and Collado 4th. Another good finish for Collado, with Charles Weerts in 5th, and the rest of the field comes streaming through. De Vries managing to take that final points paying position ahead of Van Gisbergen. So nil points for New Zealand. As we wait, Stuvik, the only driver to be a lap down in this race. But Yamamoto obviously having an issue earlier on in the race means that it's pretty much bookended the field. But confirmation that Kamui Kobayashi wins the sprint race ahead of Joseph Newgarden in second, and Daniel Ricciardo in 3rd. James Collado 4th, ahead of Charles Weerts with a brilliant performance, finishing ahead of Alex Palou in 6th. Robin Freins finished 7th, ahead of Nick Heidfeld in 8th, and Elvin Evans in 9th, with the final point going to Nick De Vries in 10th. Shane Van Gisbergen was 11th, ahead of Carl Larson in 12th, Scott Dixon in 13th. A struggle for Team New Zealand, but further on down is Jack Aitken in 14th, ahead of Max Hart in 15th, Paul di Resta 16th, and Alex Dunn 17th. Lee Watanabe finished 18th, ahead of Ella Lloyd in 19th, Philip Hansen in 20th, with Yamamoto in 21st, and Stuvik was the last classified driver in 22nd. Moving on to the retirements, we had Sebastian Bourdais with that accident in the latter stages, ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn that also had the transmission failure. Pagenaud again with an accident, so 2 accidents there for Team France, ahead of Rast with the transmission failure. So drama once again in Interlagos, with the championship very much on the line coming into the last couple of rounds. It's back over to Chris.
considering that New Zealand didn't get any points in that sprint and appear to be struggling here in São Paulo, those are some great points for the likes of Spain and in particular Japan. What a great victory that was. And Joseph Newgarden sticking it out there, and again, very tricky conditions. Some drivers really struggling there. And for Van Dorn, that's quite a pain in the backside that is to get a retirement. But hey, Charles Vers for his first race, top 5, pretty good going. But now we can look towards the Division 2 feature race, where more points are dished out, and Kevin Magnussen starts on pole. Roman De Angelis for Canada in second place. Robert Wickens also from Canada in third, so good qualifying for them. Felix Rosenqvist for his title hopes in fourth, that's very handy. And then Will Power and Jimmy Whincup in fifth and sixth for Australia. Rafael Marcello in seventh, Christian Newgarden in eighth, Felipe Albuquerque for Portugal in ninth, and Sebastian Buemi in 10th. He'll want to get a bit higher up in the field to get some more points for himself there and his championship hopes. Antonio Felix da Costa in 11th, Marcus Ericsson in 12th, Arthur Leclerc in 13th, and as I said earlier, Pato O'Ward in 14th. Not a good qualifying for his title defence. He needs to make sure he gets up the field somehow. And then Antonio Fuoco in 15th, Sheldon van der Linde in 16th, Stefan Riccoboni 17th, Antonio Giovinazzi in 18th, Nico Verone for Argentina in 19th, Kelvin van der Linde in 20th, Rafael Villa-Gomez in 21st, Felipe Nasr for Brazil 22nd, Felipe Drogovic 23rd, Sasha Fenestras 24th, and the two Indy cars for Goodison and Carter Kane in 25th and 26th. So for the first feature race of the day, back to Ryan Ferris.
Division 2 feature race time, and it's Kevin Magnussen on pole position, currently sitting 4th in the championship. Can he bring the gap down to the front end of the field? We'll soon find out as the 5 lights come on, and they're away in Sao Paulo. Great start from De Angelis, who takes the lead, but Rosenqvist comes through into the lead. So Rosenqvist takes the lead here in Sao Paulo. Will Power has managed to get up into second position, and De Angelis is in third. Buemi's come up through into fourth from 10th on the grid. Ericsson's shuffled down into fifth, and Magnussen's in sixth. So brilliant start there from, well, particularly Buemi, and this is De Angelis retaking second position from Will Power, and Rosenqvist now leading, wanting to try and make up for his ill fortunes earlier on. He's 7 points off of Pato O'Ward. O'Ward just about managing to scrape a couple of points earlier on in the sprint race. But here is Buemi, who's started 10th on the grid, is already up into 4th position. And he has Will Power just ahead of him in 3rd. So the team just G'ing up Rosenqvist, telling him how much of a good start that was. And now it's just head down for this first stint. De Angelis, who was probably the standout driver in the sprint race earlier, saw him come up through the field, finishing inside the top 5. And just saying there was a lot of talk between the drivers about how ferocious, as that's Raffaele Marcello going up down the inside of Fuoco for 10th position. As I was about to say there, the curves at the end of Descida del Lago was claiming a lot of front wings throughout the sprint races, and so between the sprint races and the feature races, Whincup still struggling with the curves, and he's lost his front wing. And he's now going to hold up a lot of the cars behind. They're all trying to negotiate their way around the injured Whincup, who's no front end downforce. Is going to have to limp that car back to pit lane, and it's going to be a long old Sao Paulo race for Whincup. But as I was saying, the curves are not as aggressive at Descida del Lago, but obviously at the exit of Ferradura, still quite aggressive, as you can see for Whincup. So on board with race leader Felix Rosenqvist, who is got a 1 second advantage over Roman De Angelis in the background here. Here's Marcus Ericsson pulling a move on Will Power for 5th position. And Power once again struggling with the car in race trim. Here's Pato O'Ward, championship leader, currently down in 12th position. And as it stands, it's realistically, the top 4 in the championship who are fighting for the championship. There's still a few mathematically in the hunt, but realistically it is O'Ward, Rosenqvist, Buemi and Magnussen in the championship charge, and at the moment championship leader O'Ward well down the order compared to his rivals. So continuing on, Rosenqvist keeping a fairly consistent 1 second advantage to De Angelis. And De Angelis 1.6 seconds ahead of Buemi in 3rd position. Further on back, here is Fuoco under attack once again. This time it is Da Costa going through into 10th position. So continuing on, here is Giovinazzi, and he's also lost his front wing. Going through Ferragura, and he's now spun into the S's, and that's someone else off. So that's Calvin van der Linde, and I'm assuming that was, well, either in an avoidance or sympathy. But luckily for him, he's managed to get away unscathed. Meanwhile, across the line, and I'm assuming De Angelis must have made some sort of mistake there, because he closed in just under a second, but it's now 1.2, the advantage between Rosenqvist and De Angelis. And van der Linde recovering back through. Giovinazzi will have to pit, and that will bring Whincup back into play for those tail end Charlies, as there's more drama going on, and that's O'Ward and Fuoco. So what has happened there? So we have Fuoco here in 11th position, O'Ward in the slipstream as they come down the Retroposta, and I'm assuming down the inside, and a little bit of a lock up there by the looks of things from O'Ward, and he's just drifted wide into Fuoco. So down the inside you can see here into the left-hander, and yeah, a lock up there, and clearing out Fuoco, losing his front wing as well. So I think we'll be seeing some form of steward's inquiry there. So lock up there, and there you go, just nerfing him off the track, which has caused him to damage the front wing. And now it's going to be a long old limp back to pit lane for Fuoco, and he'll be furious, and it is a 30-second penalty there for O'Ward. 4 penalty points and a 10-place grid drop for next time out. But back out at the front, it's Felix Rosenqvist still leading. And that's Whincup back off again. He's completely destroyed the front end and the rear end of that car. So coming down the Retroposta again. And although the curves being fixed by the race officials, it's still turning out to be a very tricky corner. And at this point, for Whincup, he might as well park it. So, but he's still going to carry on. He's practically driving a Formula Ford car at this rate. But further on, towards the front is Buemi, who's going to have to fend off from Magnussen, who's been gradually closing in on Buemi. Magnussen, who was the pole sitter but didn't have the greatest of starts, he's now had a bit of a regroup, a bit of a rethink, and Lundgaard in the background coming through on Power, and Power still struggling for race pace. But here is Buemi, and that's Leclerc going off again. Another car falling victim to Decido de Largo, and another front wing missing. And the main difficulty of the Decido de Largo corner is it is slightly off camber on corner entry, so it does naturally push you out wide, and that is something that the drivers appear to be struggling with. And this is Felipe Nasr, and he's having to negotiate his way around Leclerc. But here it is, Roman De Angelis. There's Buemi in third, still being shadowed there by Magnussen. Gap slowly starting to increase between Rosenqvist and De Angelis. And it is really starting to get very close now between Buemi and Magnussen for that third position. Further on back, that's Raffaele Marcello in 7th position. He is behind Robert Wickens, who is now attacking Power, and Power's just going backwards in this race unless he can find something to change the car at the next pit stop. It's going to be a long old day for the Australian. So, looking at Sheldon van der Linde here in 14th position. He's currently sat just about inside the points. And Floco's complaining that the engine's gone now, so it's not been a very successful weekend at all for Floco. 2 DNFs. And not a very successful weekend at all for Team Italy, as obviously Giovinazzi with that a DNF himself in the sprint race, and now also running towards the back end of the field here in the feature. But still back at the front, De Angelis trying to make some inroads into Rosenqvist, but he's struggling, and also in the background Magnussen, I'm not sure if he tried to make a move somewhere, but he's dropped off a car length or two away from Buemi. He's got Ericsson starting to close in the background. Around here's Marcello sizing up Wickings down into the inside, and that's another position taken there for Marcello. Next up is Power, who's potentially going to be easy pickings here, although Wickens wasn't able to do much about him. The team just telling Rosenqvist to keep it easy, keep it calm, nothing too silly, don't want to throw away a good result. But here's Felipe Albuquerque in 12th position, was running up towards the front in the sprint race. Still, De Angelis still trying to hunt down Rosenquist, still trying to keep him somewhat honest. Whincup coming back through the field. Well, actually, no, he's going to be laps down, so this is actually him unlapping himself. I think that was him going through on Wickens. And the problem with this is Whincup's on much fresher tyres. Well, as I say that, he's now lost his front wing. Actually, no, that's power. My apologies. So, whilst we were on board with one Australian car, we cut to the other that's just gone off into the wall, lost the front wing, and, well, just where the drivers were complaining about Decido de Largo, I think the next complaints will be coming from Ferradura. Potentially they may want to think about putting some form of runoff, tarmac runoff there, because that curb is, well, proving to be quite the problem for the drivers. And that has well and truly wrecked Australia's chances for points in this race today. And here's Ragunathan, he's also lost his front wing. Chaos here in Sao Paulo, and it usually does create chaos. And Whincup's off again! And he's lost yet another front wing, so that's 4 front wings there for Team Australia in the space of a handful of laps. So after bringing his way through past Wickens, unlapping himself against Marcello, he proceeds to go off once again at Decido de Largo. At this point, you might as well retire the car. I mean, I don't even know if the team have got any more front wings left at this rate. I think they must be very lucky that there is no cost cap in this championship, as I think Australia would be well and truly exceeding it, among other teams. But here is Magnussen lining up Buemi for a move, is he, into the CNRS. I don't think he's quite close enough, but he may be able to line something up down the Retroposta into Decido de Largo. But that Team Switzerland car just able to get off the corner quickly, but not quickly enough, and Magnussen's drawing up alongside. He's now got Will Power in front of them, who's just came out of pit lane following that front wing change. But in theory he might not be an issue, being on fresh tyres. You'd have thought he'd be running a little bit quicker than these guys. But back at the front, it's Rosenquist continuing to extend his advantage over De Angelis. Nearly 2 seconds now is the gap. And we're not too far away from the opening of the pit window. Lap 14 is roughly where we expect to see people start coming in for their first stops, depending if they're running a shortest fuel strategy in this early stint. Here's Carthagena now under pressure from one of the South Africa cars. I think that's it's Kelvin van der Linde. But here's Magnussen now happily in third position, pulling away from Buemi. But as we said, traffic may be an issue, as we see more cars, and that's 3 abreast pretty much. And that's Will Power going down the inside of his teammate, and in turn has really ruined Roman De Angelis's drive into that. He's not going to be happy. That's really cost him. 3.5 seconds is now the gap between Rosenquist and De Angelis is furious. And look at that, that's Magnussen on the back of him now. What is going on here? You got Whincup, who's really not allowing De Angelis through. That's cost him massively. And now he's got Magnussen on his tail. And now Buemi, who Magnussen had thought he'd dispatched of, is all over the back of him. And this is allowing Ericsson in the background to catch up as well, being chased by Lundgaard. All the while, this is allowing Rosenquist up the road. He's got a 6.5 second advantage, which I think is going to be a bit more as they come across the line now. And look at this. This is Whincup challenging to unlap himself. And now Magnussen has got Buemi down the inside of him into the centre S, and that's a position loss. And there's smoke coming out. That's a lock-up there from Whincup. What on earth is going on from this experienced driver? You'd expect him to be far more courteous. And now Magnussen back up down the inside of Buemi, going to retake that third position. All the while, this has now allowed Ericsson onto the back end of Buemi, and now Lundgaard isn't too far behind him as well. Ericsson's having a look down the inside. No, you can't do a move there, surely, and he doesn't. And this has given Rosenquist quite the happy margin now. 6.6 seconds is the gap between himself and De Angelis. So Rosenquist going to box at the end of this lap. But here is De Angelis still under pressure from Whincup. But all the while, O'Ward's managed to get himself up into 10th position. And Rosenquist has indeed pitted now. De Angelis pits as well from second position. That's allowed Magnussen to take the lead from Buemi. Now Magnussen's now stuck behind Whincup, and that's going to allow Buemi to coax up onto the back of him one more time, but he's going to bring Ericsson and Lundgaard with him as well. So De Angelis still in pit lane. He's going to be exiting sometime soon, and he comes out behind Sasha Fenestraz in 14th. So a lot of battles ahead, and there's a battle going on straight in front of him at the moment. That's Drugovich just being passed by Fenestraz, and now he's got De Angelis all over the back of him. But with all this traffic at the moment, it's going to be costing De Angelis time. Generally, we haven't seen any overtaking going on throughout the middle sector. It's only been around the Senna S and Decido de Larga that we've really seen any overtaking. So, Switzerland going late into the strategy. There's a lock-up there for Giovinazzi, who's in 20th position and at the moment not on course to score points, but with the rate things have been going on in this race, there's still chance that Giovinazzi, who had his off earlier on in this race, could still score some points. With the rest of the field now pitting, he's going to come through not too far away from the points actually, but he has got one of the Van der Lindes behind him. I think that's Sheldon Van der Linde. That's De Angelis, who's still not managed to find a way through on Drugovich. But here is as Ericsson and Lundgaard have now pitted from 3rd and 4th position. That's brought Wickens up into 3rd. He's still yet to stop and looking to be going longer on into this stint. But here's Whincup, and for once actually negotiating Decido de Largo. I was expecting him to have another off-track excursion. So here is Felix da Costa, and he's all over the back end now of De Angelis, who's still not found a way through on Drugovich. Rosenqvist all the while sat in 4th position. Here's Sheldon van der Linden now under pressure from Stefan McCalmy for 16th position. And quite literally, if they keep their noses clean, they're on for points. So Magnusson and Buemi still continuing on, 1st and 2nd. Luckily for Magnusson, as Wickens now pits from 3rd position, that's going to promote Rosenqvist into 3rd. Yeah, luckily for Magnusson, the Australian car up ahead with those fresher tyres has pulled away from him, so he's not going to be costing him with any form of dirty air. As we see De Angelis trying to get through on Lundgaard, who's stuck behind Fenestraz. But here is Lundgaard going through on Fenestraz. De Angelis struggling to get through the traffic. But this time he's drawn side by side. There's 3 abreast in the background. That's Marcello. And I think that is Da Costa, Drugovic. There's Ericsson's in there as well. So Magnusson is going to box this lap. I wonder if Buemi will do the same. Now that Rosenqvist is in clear air. So Magnusson pits, but Buemi's carried on. So Buemi is going to go as far as he can into the stint, hoping that he's going to have enough of a tyre advantage into this second part of the race, but also hoping that he's not going to find his way in amongst any traffic. But here's Albuquerque under pressure now from O'Ward. O'Ward 13th in all of this. There's a big train of cars. This is Drugovic in 10th, all the way down to Wickens in 14th. So Albuquerque pops out. He's going to go down the inside now of Ericsson. But Ericsson's going to fight back. No, he can't quite. But here's Robert Wickens back in 12th position. There's a jockeying for position there. So O'Ward down the inside, 11th position. Another couple of points taken there by the Mexican, who is not having the best of days, but so far he's managed to keep it out of the scenery. As Buemi pits from the lead. So Rosenqvist will retake that lead, and he's got quite a considerable margin ahead of Magnusson, who will then be in 2nd position. So, as they come back up the hill, Buemi dropping down the order. Hopefully, in theory, he's going to come out in 3rd position ahead of Lundgaard. Actually, no, he's dropping back further. So, De Angelis, let's see where he comes out in comparison to De Angelis. I think he's exited pit lane in 4th position ahead of De Angelis, just as you can see there. So, he's just popped out ahead of De Angelis, and that just shows you how much time De Angelis has lost in that traffic by pitting early. And he's gone off in the background. I think there was a lock-up there from De Angelis. And he is plummeting down the order. You can see he's down into 11th now. So De Angelis off, and someone else is off ahead. It's Lundgaard. And just completely loses it at the exit of Ferragira and into the barriers at the S's. That's going to be quite difficult to get out there. But he's managing to keep going. He's going to have to get a new front wing. We haven't seen the state of De Angelis' car, but this is all allowing O'Ward to carry on up through the field. He's now in 9th position as a result of everyone else going off the track. There is Roman De Angelis with no front wing. And Kevin Magnussen sets the fastest lap of the race in his pursuit of Rosenqvist, although there's a long way to go, 11.5 seconds. And Lundgaard's still stuck in the gravel track. Now, if he can't get out anytime soon, he's at risk of stalling it, as Rosenqvist comes through to put a lap on him. And Rosenqvist, who is going about the right way to right his wrongs from earlier sprint race, but there's still plenty of laps left, 16 laps to go. And DeAngelis has made it back to pit lane. He's going to be lapped, and so with all these different drivers who have suffered issues losing front wings, they're going to be scattered all over the place. But here is Magnussen, who's actually gradually closing that gap down. He's taken a second out of Rosenqvist now. That's Lundgaard finally getting out of the gravel trap. No, he's still there. He could be there for some time. Here's Leclerc in 16th. A driver who, well, at one point thought he wouldn't be scoring points, but there is a championship point just in front of him in the form of Kelvin van der Linde. And that's Raffaele Marcello, he's spun. So another car managing to spin and avoid the curve, so he's not managed to damage the car, but still managed to lose a handful of positions. And by the looks of things is... Oh, well, I was singing his praise until that point. Now he's lost his front wing and he's going to have the front wing replaced once again. So another driver falling foul to Decido de Largo, and he smashes the rest of it up for good measure. So he won't be scoring points today. That's allowed. Well, Kelvin van der Linde is going to go up a position, which means Leclerc will also go up a position. And O'Ward is now up into 8th position, so finally that looks to be Lundgaard coming into pit lane. And this race is basically turning into, as long as you can keep it on the black stuff, you're going to be on for a good result. But one driver who's so far not put a foot wrong in this race so far is Rosenqvist, but he is continuing to be closed by Magnussen. Gap is now down to 9.2 seconds. The gap was over 11 seconds at one point, so it is coming down at a rate of knots. And here's Alfa Leclerc going down the inside of Kelvin van der Linde for 14th position. And job done there into the center S's, and that's Ericsson going off. And he goes off in front of Wickens, and that's a big crash going on there, but luckily O'Ward involved, but none of them taking any damage apart from Ericsson. And now Ericsson, who was on for a good result there, is now going to have to be one of the many drivers having to make that drive of shame back to the pit stop, or pit lane. But as it stands at the moment, completely forgetting all the other drama that's been going on, I'd also forgotten about the fact that O'Ward has got that 30-second penalty over his head, and he is outside of the points as it stands. So Ericsson's managed to make it back to the pits, and in doing so is outside of the points. But Rosenquist continues to lead, and that's Villagomez going off, and I think someone else is going off as well. So off into the scenery goes Villagomez. Yellow flag's out, he's lost part of his front wing. And he's having to wait for another car to come round. And he tumbles out of the points. Meanwhile, having lost quite a lot of time actually, here's Marcello managing to come back through the field. Down the inside there. I think that was that. Is that Kevin Magnussen he's just gone through on? Yes, it is. So he's just gone through on second place Magnussen, who is currently still closing at a rate of knots on Rosenquist. As a result of being passed there, though, by Marcello, he was 6.5 seconds. It's now 7.1 seconds, but still closing at a rate of knots. And Villagomez, who's just rejoined, is holding up Rosenquist. And indeed, you can see there, with no front wing, so where Marcello had cost him a little bit of time, there's De Angelis down in 20th position. But what is the gap as they come across the line? It's 6 seconds now between Rosenquist and Magnussen. You just about see him in the background there. Closing, he's got a slightly faster Raffaele Marcello, who's pulling away from him. And this is the other thing, where we've got plenty of people coming out of pit lane on fresher tyres as a result of their own doing. The front runners are having to deal with faster back markers coming back past them. Here's Lungard making his way through the field, although 2 laps down. But it still is only Fuoco, our only retirement so far in this race, somehow. And that's Fenestraz up into 13th position ahead of Kelvin van der Linde. And Argentina, as it stands, on to score points. Leclerc's just moved ahead of Nasser for 11th position. In fact, I think there's a problem there for Nasser because he's dropping down the order, and there he is. So another front wing missing, and this time it is for one of the home heroes of Nasser. He's had to come through to a stop, and I think this is race leader Rosenquist he's coming through, and it is indeed. He's had to come out, and he's poking his nose back out again, but he's still not rejoining. Here's Ericsson down in 15th position on a bit of a recovery drive now. And now Rosenquist's gap is only 4.4 seconds, and I think actually you could see Magnussen just in the background. But he's got his other opponent so far of this race, who's now a lap down, coming to unlap himself, and this is going to cost Rosenquist if he does interfere. You can just about see Magnussen, he's the red car in the back of shot, not that shot there, that is one of the Team Switzerland cars, that is Raffaele Marcello. But there is Magnussen. The gap 3.7 seconds. It is still continuing to go down, as you can see, battling just up ahead. I think that was Marcello moving ahead of, I think that was Will Power. Nasser has finally managed to make it back to pit lane. And someone's off up ahead. Who is that? And that is De Angelis once again. So De Angelis, who was looking to try and make a move on Rosenquist, just in Rosenquist's dirty areas, too close and very close to wiping out Rosenquist there. think Rosenqvist, if he didn't see what just happened, he'd be thanking his lucky stars that he is still leading this race, because that was very, very close. But all the while, Magnussen continuing to close the advantage. 2.9 seconds is the gap now. He can see, as he's got Marcello all over the back of him now, does Rosenqvist. Now, is Marcello going to start getting involved? You can see he is closing, but not quite close enough to make a move. But I fear for Rosenqvist that there may be a move being shaped up by Marcello into Decido del Lago. Kevin Magnussen currently has the fastest lap of the race. And the gap is now down to 2 seconds, so if we look further on ahead, and indeed, yes, we do see the Team Switzerland car has moved ahead of Rosenqvist, and now Rosenqvist is under pressure by Will Power, and this is costing him time. Magnussen closing hand over fist. They're in the same camera shot now, 2 seconds. And I feel for Rosenqvist, if he does lose this lead here, he's going to be feeling pretty hard done by the backmarkers, who have pretty much ganged up on him so far. And it looks like one more is going to find their way through now. As Will Power tucked up in the slipstream on Rosenqvist, he pulls out to the inside, and he's going to send it, and it cost Rosenqvist loads of time. Rosenqvist chooses not to fight back in this situation, but that has allowed Magnussen to draw ever closer. Now there isn't a single car separating Rosenqvist between himself and Magnussen now, and Buemi just about coming into the same camera shot, so 7 seconds between, or just over 7 seconds between the top three now, and that gap was well over 12 seconds at the start of this stint. So it is all starting to come together for a major climax in this RML race. But it is Rosenqvist still hanging on. The gap under a second now, as Riquelme is now passed by Lundgaard, or obviously Lundgaard 2 laps down. So not a position change there. And this is De Angelis. Very late move there, down the inside. On Riquelme, I think that was. But here is Buemi in third position. Don't think he's quite making enough up to catch up onto the first and second position battle. But here is the first and second position battle, and Rosenqvist now just over a second ahead of Magnussen with 6 laps remaining. He will be getting a little bit of a tow from the Team Australia car ahead, but at the same time he will be in the dirty air of the Team Australia car ahead, so where it will be giving him a little bit of help up the hill, down the straights, it's not going to be helping through this tight and twisty middle sector. And all the while, Magnussen, on fresher tyres than Rosenqvist, is continuing to close. Gap now under a second for the first time. Now up the hill in the slipstream now, finally. What is the gap going to be as they come across the line? It's actually gone up to 9/10 between that sector, so not the best of corner exits from Zheng Xiao for Magnussen. But he's still got time. Now, as we saw earlier, there's one of the Team India cars just up ahead now. They're going to be causing a bit of a headache for Will Power. And then, if it's going to cause a headache for Will Power, it's going to cause a headache for Rosenqvist. And indeed, there is Carthagena, 18th position, who is ahead of Power for position at the moment. So this is actually a battle for position. They are outside of the points, but as a result, that has now caused Magnussen to be right on the back of Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist, who's on older tyres than Power ahead, and Magnussen behind, is now finding himself in a very difficult position. When they cross the line, there will be 4 laps remaining. Can Rosenqvist hold on? What he really wants is what Power's about to try and do. Power's going to try and get through. No, he's going to put a car in between himself and Magnussen. That's brilliant stuff there, but Magnussen's still coming down the inside of Power as well. And almost wipes into the side of Rosenqvist, so this is still... Rosenqvist is going to have to dispatch off Carthagena as soon as possible. He's going to have to do it down this straight if he's going to withstand any opportunity of holding on. But also, Magnussen places his car down the inside. Not as easy past Carthagena. That's actually cost him quite a bit of position now, so that's good stuff there for Rosenqvist. I think he's got best part of over a second now ahead of Magnussen, but clear air once again for the pair of them. We'll see as we come through the next timing mark. Here's DeAngelis coming up through the field, still outside of the points. So we carry on board. So, what is the gap? 1.4 seconds is the advantage now. And we'll see as we come across the line. 3 laps will remain. And it is 1.7 seconds. This still a battle actually going on in the background. This is Power going through down the inside of Carthagena. 18th position now for Will Power, still outside the points. But Rosenqvist, has he done enough to hang on? It looks like he has. Here's Villagomez battling with Raghunathan. And that's job done there, albeit for 21st position. But the gap's still coming down. It's 1.3 seconds now at the front. So Magnussen are going to still continue to try and close the gap. 2 laps remain and 1.4 seconds is the gap. I think it's a big ask though for Rosenqvist. I think Rosenqvist hasn't got any traffic to deal with for the rest of the race. But here's Buemi. He's now caught up onto the back end of Carthagena, and Carthagena allows Buemi through. But the gap, 1.3 seconds as they're about to come round to finish the final sector, Rosenqvist and Magnussen. And there will be 1 lap remaining in this Sao Paulo Division 2 feature race. The gap is now under a second now between Rosenqvist and Magnussen. But is it too little, too late? Was Rosenqvist's traffic management exactly what he needed in those final stages of this race? They come across the line to start the final lap, and it is just over a second between Rosenqvist and Magnussen. So they come down the Retroposta one final time. They have to deal with the pesky Tessida Delago. They've managed that perfectly. The only other corner that's been an issue for drivers is just coming up now is Ferradura. Here's Whincup down the inside, albeit a lap down. And continuing to make up spots on track. But back at the front here is Magnussen, right behind Rosenqvist, but I fear it's too late as they come round. The final corner, Zheng Zhao, and Magnussen closes, but it's going to be too late for Magnussen. Rosenqvist is most certainly going to win here, and he crosses the line to win here in Sao Paulo ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Buemi's now 7 seconds behind, and he should finish. There he is in third position. We did see a brief change for position there. I think Da Costa's going to be fourth, as you can see here. And actually, that wasn't a change of position, that was just Da Costa being unlapped. But good points there for Team Portugal with Da Costa and Albuquerque in 4th and 5th position. There he is, Albuquerque in 5th. And he comes in ahead of Wickens and O'Ward. Now, there's O'Ward. More importantly, where is he actually going to finish with that 30-second penalty? Here's Sheldon van der Linde, who's managed to come through in 9th, which I think is going to be 8th position. Brilliant recovery there for Team South Africa. Leclerc comes through, Fenestraz, so Team Argentina on for some points there. And Giovinazzi, after a terrible start to the race, does finish inside the points, ahead of Kelvin van der Linde. Now, everyone is now across the line, and we wait to see the official confirmation that Felix Rosenqvist has in fact definitely won the Sao Paulo feature race ahead of Kevin Magnussen and Sebastian Buemi. Antonio Felix da Costa finished 4th ahead of Felipe Albuquerque in 5th. Robert Wickens finished 6th ahead of Stefan Ricami in 7th. Sheldon van der Linde was 8th ahead of Nico Varone in 9th. Marcus Ericsson finished 10th ahead of Arthur Leclerc in 11th. Sacha Fenestraz makes it a double points finish for Argentina in 12th. Further on down, Pato O'Ward just about snuck into the points there with his 30-second penalty in 14th, ahead of Calvin van der Linde in 15th. Felipe Drugovich just missing out there in 16th. Raffaele Marcello 17th. 18th was Will Power. Naren Karthikeyan in 19th. Rafael Villagomez in 20th. Raghunathan was 21st, ahead of Felipe Nasser in 22nd. All of these finishing a lap down, and we go on to Roman De Angelis in 23rd. Jamie Whincup was 2 laps down, ahead of Christian Lundgaard as well, also in 2 laps down, and somehow we only had one retirement in that race in Antonio Fuoco. Now, big points scored there and a big change up in the championship. I'll hand you over to Chris to give you the point scores.
Well, that race was a definite example of chaos for you, despite even having a part of the track being fixed due to some interesting situations happening in the sprints. It still didn't fix the amount of chaos that was happening. So anybody that managed to go around without having to pit for a new wing, well done to you, and especially well done to Felix Rosenqvist for a fantastic drive, and that would definitely helps propel him into a really prosperous spot for the championship. As we can see now, he actually in fact leads the championship on 211 points with a 14-point gap to Sebastian Buemi on 197. Pato O'Ward now slips to third at 195 points. Still only 16 back, 2 rounds to go. Is all is not lost. Kevin Magnussen now 181.30 behind, and it's a bit of a gap now to Jamie Whincup on 140 points, 71 behind. Will Power on 139, Arthur Leclerc 138, Raffaele Marcello on 138 as well, Philip Albuquerque on 127. And what we can officially say, with 2 rounds left to go, anybody who is more than 84 points behind the race leader at this stage with 2 rounds to go is officially eliminated from winning the driver's title. Antonio Felix da Costa on 123, Robert Wickens on 121, Christian Lundgaard on 120, and Antonio Giovinazzi on 96. Going further down the order, Roman De Angelis on 95, Felipe Nasr on 85, Stefan Rakelmi on 83, Antonio Fuoco on 72, Marcus Ericsson 65, Kelvin van der Linden on 43, Feder Strauss on 42 now, with Nico Barone on 38, Rafael Villegas on 37, Fauna Roddy on 36, Rafael Camara on 34, with Sheldon van der Linden, James Hinchcliffe on 18 points still, and then Felipe Djokovic still on 10 points. Not a good weekend for the Brazilians at the home race. Mahavir Raghunathan, on 10 points still. Bruno Senna on 9, Fakir Begedin and Narain Karthikeyan still on 0. And how does it look for the nations standings? Switzerland still in the lead on 335, 34 ahead of Denmark, but it's so close. Just behind them, Australia and Sweden, just 3 points in it, going to the final 2 rounds of the season, and well, only one of those can go up. And then Portugal, with a good finish today, gets itself 250 points in 5th place. Canada in 234, Mexico 232, Monaco 221, Italy 204, Brazil on 138, Argentina on 82, South Africa on 77, and India on 10. With one very chaotic race out of the way, we're going to have another one now, potentially, with the Division 1 feature race now to come. And we can see the grid for that. Germany's René Rast is on pole, with Naoki Yamamoto of Japan trying to make his title charge, much like Rast now, in 2nd place. Philip Hansen, the championship leader, hoping to see what he can get there in 3rd. Stoffel Vandoorne on an absolute charge of late in 4th place. Daniel Yokodev for Spain in 5th. Simon Pagenaud also looking to put himself in the hunt for the title fight in 6th. Kamui Kobayashi to help Japan get points in 7th. James Collado in 8th place there. And Alex Palou to see if he can get some points somewhere as well. And 9th. Joseph Newgarden in 10th. Sebastian Bourdais in 11th place. Charles Wirtz for Belgium in 12th. Nick Heidfeld for Germany in 13th. Robin Fryans 14th. Elfyn Evans to see if he can get some points for Wales in 15th. Carl Kirkwood in 16th. Shane Van Gisbergen and Scott Dixon for New Zealand. They need to have some form of charge in this race and maybe a bit of luck out there in 17th and 18th. Nick De Vries on 19th. Alex Dunn in 20th. Ella Lloyd in 21st. Sandy Stupik in 22nd. Max Hart in 23rd. Paul de Resta for Scotland in 24th. Jack Aitken for 25th. And then Natalie Leewatanavargul in 26th. And for the final race of the day, Ryan Ferris, over to you.
The final race of the evening here in Sao Paulo, and it is Division 1 feature race with Rast on pole, with Yamamoto in 2nd. Now, the championship is very, very close. How close is it going to get as we have lights out and away we go? Great getaway there from Rast from the pole sitter, but Yamamoto's going to steam down the inside. No, he isn't, and no changes there into the Senna S's. Hanson in 3rd, Vandoorne in 5th, and Collado sits in 5th position. So Yamamoto well tucked up into the slipstream now, but in the background there you can see Hanson going down the inside, and that's 2nd position there for the Englishman. And it seems as though, based on the way that Yamamoto is not really getting away that quickly, he must be running a heavier fuel load, so expect to see him go long into the stint. Meanwhile, Rast still leading. And 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th are all in contention for the championship. And Heidfeld has a broken front wing, so first of many, most likely. Vandoorne there in 4th position, catching up onto the rear end of Yamamoto for 3rd position. Further on back you got Collado. But you can see there Yamamoto going slightly on the defensive in the background. That looks like Pagenaud going through on Yonkade, and indeed it is, into the centre S. Kobayashi, the sprint race winner, in 8th position. He's going to be tucked up in the slipstream indeed, and you can see he's starting to close, but instead it's Yamamoto on the counter-attack on Pagenaud. Kobayashi thought about going through there, but whilst all that was going on, Vandoorne has gone through on Yamamoto for 3rd position. He's going to go after Hanson. Here's Dixon under pressure there from Alex Palou. Dixon and in New Zealand in general, struggling this weekend. So it's going to be damage limitation. Currently in the hunt though for the, well, both Drivers' Championship and Constructors is New Zealand. But here's Philip Hanson still staying within half a second now of René Rast, and I think that might have come down a little bit more. No, it stayed the same, half a second across the line. Van Dorn there in third position. Now what can he do? Further on back, that's Kobayashi being passed by Charvet. Pagenaud, can he have another go at getting past Juncadella? As they come down to Desida de Lago. A little bit of a defensive jink there from Juncadella, and Pagenaud will have to sit behind him. Realistically won't get another shot until the Centre S. And Bourdais reporting a technical issue and is gone. So out of the race for Sebastian Bourdais. Big lock-up ahead as well. But out of the race goes the Frenchman. So here is Nick Heidfeld, who's recovering from the broken front wing. But out at the front, and that's Nick de Vries out. So de Vries with a puncture. So 2 retirements already more than what we had in the League 2 race. So still at the front, Rast ahead of Hanson. Hanson, your current championship leader. And here is Kyle Kirkwood down the inside. And that was of one of the Team Scotland cars. I think that was... I didn't quite see which one it was actually. So further on up, my apologies. Shane van Gisbergen, 14th. Again, as I said, damage limitation for New Zealand. And he's got the fast charging... I was about to say he's got the fast charging Kirkwood behind him, but he's gone off. And who's that gone off? One of the Team Ireland cars. And it's Max Hart. So, Team Ireland and Kirkwood, well... They're both going to struggle to get back on track, but Hart's just about managed, but I don't know if Kirkwood's just stalled in the gravel track. Nope, he's managed to get going. He's managed to spin turn it into the barriers. And what was, after covering himself in glory, it's all gone a bit downhill from there, but he's back on track. And in last position. Luckily, by the looks of things, no damage to the car. But here is Van Dorn, third position, as Kobayashi's having a bit of an issue there. And narrowly avoiding the pesky gravel trap. Down at Desida de Lago. But Kobayashi ahead of Juncadella, so... Juncadella must have had an issue somewhere, because obviously he was battling with Pagenaud earlier, so he's gone back a few positions. And it looks as though Frines and Palou... No, that's Palou off in the wall! Alex Palou, currently 4th in the championship, is in the barriers. below 13 points at the moment, off of the lead of the championships, Hanson. And here's Collado under pressure now from Pagenaud, but Collado was going to try and hang it out there, but was unable to do so, so that's another position there for Pagenaud. And he is up into 5th, and in doing so, Collado being a bit wrong-footed there out of the Senna S's, Charles Weerts gets a much better drive down the Retroposta, and that is 6th position for the Belgian. So Van Dorn still in contention for the championship, which is fairly amazing considering he missed the first 3 rounds and didn't come in until Germany, which was round 4. But he has just been Mr. Consistent, albeit had some pretty bad luck in the sprint earlier. Rast still leading, and that's a lock up there for Stuvik. Calvin Evans further on back. He's fighting with one of the Team Scotland cars, which is let's see. I think that's Jack Aitken, I believe. Still at the front, in top 3 in the same camera shot at the moment. But as we saw in the Division 2 race earlier, there's still a lot of potential for chaos and shenanigans in the next 30 laps. In the background there you can see Yamamoto starting to catch up onto the back of Van Dorn there. But the gap definitely coming down now between Rast and Hanson. Rast looked as though he was starting to pull away. It looks as though Hanson's had a little bit of a regroup. There we go. 0.6 of a second now, the gap between the pair of them. And Van Dorn is 1.4 seconds off the back of the pair of them as well. So it's all starting to come together quite nicely up there for the top 4. Now, another important battle at the moment is the relegation battle, and it is currently between Team Thailand and Team Scotland. As it stands at the moment, Thailand are just about safe, but barring any misfortunes and some good performances from Scotland in the last 3 rounds, including this one, it could all change. So this is Van Dorn, as you can see, Yamamoto in the background for 4th position. They're all pretty much still fairly close together. 3.5 seconds covers the top 4. And Rast seeing if he can make a little bit more of a break for it, but still unable to shake Hanson, who are pretty much trading lap times. Van Dorn just keeping a watching brief in the background. Obviously we saw in the feature race earlier in Division 2 that pit strategy did play a big part in the outcome of the race earlier. Even though Rosenqvist did go on to win, he made life a bit harder for himself, as those who pitted a little too early did find themselves having to deal with quite a lot of traffic. But then back markers did play a big part. Now that definitely looks a lot closer now between Rast and Hanson. They're going to be coming through another sector, I think, just now. Yes, it's down to half a second. Now, can Hanson get a good exit out of Zhengzhou and up the hill? He's going to have a decent slipstream off of Rast now. He may not be close enough to do something into the Senna S, but potentially, if he can set it up right, down the retroposter, there is a move to be done. Yamamoto still holding on. In the background is Simon Pagenaud, although not quite as fast as those ahead of him. Rast still with the fastest lap of the race. And this is Kamui Kobayashi, who's managed to have a little bit more of a regroup. 7th position at the moment. And it looks as though Rast is definitely responding on this lap. He's managed to pull out another 10th between himself and Hanson. And this is the battle now here between the two Thai drivers. So that is Stuvik going through on Lee Wataragu for 16th and 17th. As I say again, still Rast responding. He's pulled out another 10th in this sector. They come across the line now, 7/10 of a second now. And all the while, Van Dorn is starting to close on to Hanson, sorry. So if Hanson doesn't respond anytime sooner, then you could have a bit of an issue in the shape of Stoffel Van Dorn. But Van Dorn at the moment thinking very much of who's behind him as opposed to who's in front of him. So as they carry on through this tight, twisty, technical middle sector that is very downforce dependent. I think, as I said earlier on in the broadcast, I think a lot of team managers overlooked the requirement for downforce in the middle sector and put a lot of emphasis for top end speed. And a lot of them have found out that this not quite worked out in their favour. Here's Kirkwood, just a slight lick of the grass, but still living to fight another day. Down in 24th position, and it's going to be quite a tough day at the office from now on as it stands. Those ahead of him are going to be pitting, well, he's going to be too far behind. Heidfeld on fresher tyres, obviously, from that early onset incident. Here's Paul di Resta hunting down Alex Palou, who, as a result of his spin earlier, is stuck down in 20th position, and as it stands, not in a place to score points. So he's going to find himself dropping down the order, as it is a very, very close point system or points situation at the moment. With the top 8 separated by 37 points, and if you take Van Dorn out of the situation, the top 7 are separated by 18 points, and that's Dixon struggling for traction there. In 10th position, he's got Joseph Newgarden just behind him. Dixon, who currently sits 5th in the standings. And as I said, on for damage limitation. 13 points off the lead at the moment is Dixon, and so is his teammate Van Gisbergen. Actually, no, Van Gisbergen is 16 points, my apologies. There's Jack Aitken, 14th position, just ahead of Evans. So he's on course at the moment for a couple points to the Scottish team. Now, we're not too far away now from the opening of the pit window. It was roughly lap 13-14 when we started seeing the first people come into pit. Who is going to blink first? We did see, as I said, those who did come in early did suffer from traffic in the early parts of their stint. And we did see as well that tyre offset does play a big part, and there is a big speed advantage or pace advantage for those who go a little bit longer into their first stint. And Hanson is boxing next lap, so he is potentially going to be one of the first. Meanwhile, Van Dorn, Hanson's dropped off a bit on Rast. It's nearly a second between the pair of them. Van Dorn just still staying, keeping a watching brief. Here is Evans on the back end of Jack Aitken now for 14th position. It would appear that the Team Wales car is working rather nicely in this longer distance race. Both Rast and Hanson go across the line. They're not pitting this lap, but Rast is starting to put the hammer down. As you can see, the gap between Rast and Van Dorn is extended as well as it has from Hanson, so that suggests that Rast is the faster, and it's not a sense that the others are starting to fall away. So, as we know, Hanson is going to be in at the end of this lap. Here's Evans, now under pressure actually, from Stuvik. So, I feel like Evans attempted a move there on Aitken in the centre S's, which we didn't see. And based on the fact that he's that far off the back of Aitken now and has just been passed by Stuvik, suggests that it was a failed attempt on a move for P14. So out of the points now is Evans, into the points comes Stuvik in all, and it is pretty much now Scotland versus Thailand. Hanson's now in as we expected. Pagano is also in, and so is Kobayashi. Now, where are they all going to filter out? So that promotes Van Dorn up into second position. He's got some nice clear air to work with. Alex Palou moving up past Ella Lloyd into what is going to be 18th position now. There's Hanson just leaving the pits now, so he's going to join right on the back end of this pack, which is definitely not ideal for the Englishman, but he has got a little bit of free air, so in the hope that some of the drivers in front of him may pit before he gets onto the back of them. Here's Yamamoto, currently running in third position. Rast is boxing at the end of this lap, so providing Hanson doesn't get caught up too much on this lap, he may manage to go for the undercut. There was a second between them before pitting. So here is Hanson. He's going to dive down the inside and takes Ella Lloyd, almost taking Palou with him as well. And he fires off up the hill as we see Rast in pit lane. Palou is now going to pit in front of him. That's going to be music to Hanson's ears. He's got one less car to deal with. Now, where is Rast in comparison? There he is. So, where is Rast going to filter out? Rast's going to come out ahead of Hanson, just about cuts in front of Lee Wataragu. And I feel if Rast had left it a lap longer, that could have been a position loss there. But he's still filtered out behind Elfyn Evans. So, Van Dorn being told about the traffic, and he's going to pit this lap. I feel Yamamoto is going to go on a little bit longer, and indeed he is. So Van Dorn into pit lane, Yamamoto takes the lead, and that's Heidfeld going off. So Heidfeld, who'd already had an off-track excursion today, is gone for another. But he manages to rejoin. So back at the front, it's Yamamoto. So Yamamoto staying out. Lee Wataragu's now pitted, so that's going to release Hanson. Lloyd is also pitted, so that's going to release Rast. So depending on the other traffic that they come across, Yamamoto may have quite a bit of work to do, depending on the other traffic that the others have to deal with. He's probably already made it back some time, as here's Pagenaud, who's also pitted. He's trying to find his way past Paul di Resta, but not able to do so. And he's got Kobayashi right behind him as well. Here's Hanson as Weerts comes in. That's Van Dorn. So Stoffel Van Dorn has managed to come out ahead of Hanson, in which is what is now a next second position. A few more people pitting now, and they'll all start to come through. So Rast ahead of Van Dorn. There's Evans just being passed, and he's going to carry on a bit longer. There's Hanson up into 7th position, and net 3rd position. But there it is, Van Dorn, Rast, pretty much all together. Now, Van Dorn's tyres only a couple laps younger than Rast's. Whether or not that's going to make any difference or play any part in this second stint of this race. But where Yamamoto has chose to stay out and these guys are in no more traffic, this is going to make Yamamoto's second half of the race just that little bit harder, as it's not quite gone the same as it went in Division 2, and I feel that's what Team Japan were expecting was going to happen. Well, here's Charles Weerts, 30th position, and he's got James Collado for company. He's got Pagenaud just in front, and they're still bottled up behind Paul di Resta. Now Weerts thought about a move, as Van Gisbergen is now pitted. That's going to shuffle everyone else up through the field. But Weerts thought of a move there on Pagenaud, and still unable to get through on di Resta, which I'm pretty surprised about. But he's going to try and go through now. Now, down the inside come Pagenaud, and so does Weerts. Brilliant move there by the Belgian driver, and he's going to still set about going after Pagenaud. Right, so Yamamoto has made the call. He's going to pit now. So he's going to have a little bit of a tyre delta, but not much more. And you can see Weerts all over the back end now of Pagenaud. He's got one of the Team Ireland cars to deal with just in front of him as well. That's not going to help. But Yamamoto, Dixon, Newgarden all in pit lane now. I think that's Alex Dunn in front. I believe he'll be coming in soon as well. So here is your battle for the lead. René Rast just ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn now. Hanson has dropped massively off because his pit strategy didn't quite work in terms of traffic. Now Yamamoto's managed to filter out in 4th position. You might see him as Van Dorn takes the lead. So Van Dorn goes through, takes the lead off of Rast. And Van Dorn didn't hang about at all in making that move. He is definitely on a mission for the second half of the race, but can he break the toe quick enough against Rast? Can Rast come back at him? He's still staying within touching distance. The gap Yamamoto has to the lead is 8 seconds, so less of a gap than what we saw in the Division 2 race, which Magnussen managed to close in. But we haven't had as many accidents as those saying that. There's yellow flags off and it's Stuvik. Stuvik off. At Ferradura, one of the tricky corners so far this weekend. Still stuck in the gravel trap there. There's Kirkwood, another driver who's been off at that same corner actually. And such is this field spread, anyone who does make a mistake, like Stuvik has there, as we see the race leader coming through of Van Dorn. This was part of the issue in the Division 2 race. Because now, as a result of the field spread caused by the pit stops, it's taking longer for drivers to rejoin. And when they do rejoin, they find themselves not too far ahead of the leaders, so 1 or 2 drivers to keep an eye on come the latter end of the race. So confirmation there, Stuvik has retired, so was unable to get the car going back on track. 1.2 seconds now, faster than Stoffel Van Dorn, the race leader. And you can see there, Yamamoto was over 8 seconds earlier. It's now 5.8 seconds, the gap between Yamamoto in 4th and Van Dorn for the lead, where he has got Hanson and Rast to deal with. But Van Dorn hasn't quite dropped Rast at the rate that we'd think of. There's Dixon in 10th position. Pretty much stayed there for most of the race. Not really made up any sort of ground on anyone. He's in no man's land at the moment. You can just see Friends and Newgarden in the background. But Van Dorn has finally broken that 1 second advantage, or 1 second gap, to Rast, just shy of 1.2 seconds. It is now Hanson is a little over 2.5 seconds behind Rast, but the person to keep an eye on is Yamamoto. 5.2 seconds the gap between himself and Van Dorn, and he is rapidly closing in now on Hanson. Further on back, this is still Kirkwood down in 21st position. But as we found with Giovinazzi in the Division 2 race, if you keep at it after Giovinazzi had his early incident, he still managed to come through and finish in the points as a result of everyone else falling off the track after him. But here we go. Here's Yamamoto right on the tail of Hanson. He's in the slipstream as they come up the hill over the crest, and it looks as though he's not going to hang about at all. He's going to make a move down the inside into the center S's. There we go, he pops on out, and down the inside comes Yamamoto. Is Hanson going to fight back? No, he's just not got the tyres in comparison to Yamamoto to fight back. So that's P3 for Yamamoto. Now he sets about going after Rast, which is 2.5 seconds, sorry, 3 seconds. The gap between himself now and Rast. Rast is now 1.5 seconds off of Van Dorn. And still plenty of laps left in this race. So Yamamoto, who sits third at the moment, he's currently against Hanson, so he's going to reduce the gap between himself to Hanson. He's also ahead of Pagenaud, the only person who's also ahead of him in the standings. Actually, no, there isn't anyone else ahead of him at the moment in the standings. On track, the only other person who will gain on him is Rast, but it definitely looks as though he's got the pace to overhaul his advantage and most likely pass him. And the team giving Rast the bad news. You can see him there. But if Hanson finishes in 4th position where he sits at the moment, and Yamamoto does go on to win this race, it does open the door for Yamamoto to lead this championship when he leaves Sao Paulo today. Here's Ella Lloyd down in 20th position. And as it stands at the moment, it's pretty much odds on that Wales will be relegated. And we will most likely see Scotland, Ireland and Wales all relegated. England being the only team left in the top tier. Sounds like sport in general, to be honest. But here is the chase. Yamamoto eating into that advantage of Rast, whilst also still catching Van Dorn. 3 seconds is the advantage Van Dorn has over Yamamoto. But Yamamoto has got a move in the chicane. That is Rast just in front of him. Which is, well, quite a harsh way of putting it, considering Rast is still in the hunt for this championship and has done fairly well for himself this season, albeit Germany did struggle initially, but up the hill, and Yamamoto is definitely well tucked in the slipstream. Will we see a move? He's gaining, and he pulls out of the slipstream already, but no, that's a little bit too early now, and I think that may have cost him. He may have to go another lap. I think he is, because he's not going to be close enough down the Retroposta. So, Yamamoto needs a bit of a rethink. And that's Hanson going off. Hanson off. Well, he's only managed to spin it, but the danger is when he rejoins and comes across that curve, is he going to lose his front wing? He's tumbling down the order now, and he's about to exit the top 10, and it has done. And the rest of the field coming through, but he's managing to spin turn it, and he's managed to get it back on track. And I'm assuming he managed to get away without any damage. But here's René Rast with Yamamoto all over the back of him. Now, has Yamamoto learned from his mistake last time round? It looks as though Rast got the better exit there from Jung Chao, but you can see Yamamoto starting to close as he come up into the centre S's. Rast with a slightly more defensive line into the centre S's, but he's still going to have to try and hold on down the rest of Riposta. He's got a good drive out of the Curva del Sol, but it's not enough. Here comes Yamamoto. And down the inside comes Yamamoto, second position for the Japanese driver. And he's got plenty of time to hunt down Van Dorn. 2.7 seconds is the gap between Van Dorn and himself. And Dixon's managed to go up another position, I believe. So he is in 8th position. And as it stands, you could see that Hanson quite possibly, I'm not sure, he may not even be in the top 3. But my maths isn't the strongest, as you've probably already realised throughout this series, and that's Alex Dunn going off. Not quite going off, but he had a big enough lock-up to do so, but manages to keep the car all under control and carry on going, which is something not everyone else has managed to do in that situation, so fairly decent driving there from the Irishman. So here is Stoffel Van Dorn. He was the hunter and now he is the hunted. In that first position, the gap has now come down. It was 2.7, it's now 2 seconds. Here's Shane Van Gisbergen coming down the inside of Robin Friends for 11th position. And as they come across the line now, you can see 1.7 seconds is the advantage. So, 6 laps remaining, the advantage 1.8 seconds between Van Dorn and Yamamoto. And as you can see, and as the team are telling Van Dorn, there are a few lapped cars up ahead. Van Dorn hoping that he doesn't catch them at the wrong time, but Yamamoto thinking the other way round. Rast still just about staying there. He's got no pressure coming from behind. Charles Weerts in 4th position is nearly 10 seconds behind Rast. And this is so far looking like a good day regardless of whether Van Dorn finishes 1st or 2nd. It's going to be 2 cars finishing inside the top 5 at the moment for Belgium. But Van Dorn is going to have the headache of dealing with one. I believe that's Max Hart just up ahead in the Team Ireland car. And actually, if the pair of them get caught up too much, this could bring Rast back into the mix, but it would need to be a massive hold-up job from Hart for that to happen. So, Van Dorn now catching Hart exactly where he doesn't want to catch him, because he's now got the whole of the middle sector to play follow the leader to Hart. And this is going to allow Yamamoto to close. The gap hasn't really come down that much between Van Dorn and Yamamoto, but I feel it is about to now. You can see Van Dorn unable to find a way through. It's Kobayashi almost sounding like he was missing a gear there, but still carrying on. 5th position for the Japaneseman. So we have both Belgian drivers in the top 5 and both Japanese drivers in the top 5. So this will be doing great stuff for the Constructors' Championship for the pair of them. Now, I think, from what I can see in the distance, Van Dorn has now got through on René Rast. Gap is now 1.6 seconds, so Yamamoto hasn't closed too much on Van Dorn. I feel he's possibly used all of his tyre advantage up trying to catch. Here is Pagenaud on the back end of Daniel Juncadella for 6th position. Further on back, there's Scott Dixon, who's in 8th position. Yamamoto, 1.5 seconds the gap. And who's that? That's Newgarden going off. And he is now facing the wrong way. So Newgarden from 12th position. And he's going to have to sit there for some time until he can find his way back onto the track. But that has brought Evans back up into the points. Team saying if he's struggling to get out, he's to retire the car. The engine will be overheating if he doesn't get going too anytime soon. That is your leader going through, and Yamamoto doesn't look to be too far behind. 3 laps remaining, including this one. .8 seconds is the advantage. And Yamamoto, who lost some time being stuck behind Max Hart, it could be a similar situation as what we saw with Rosenqvist. Has Van Dorn timed his traffic management to perfection? He didn't panic and just found a way through, as you see Rast in the background coming through on Max Hart. And Newgarden still is adamant he's going to carry on. And no, the marshals have said no more. And a retirement there for Newgarden, who was in a fairly promising position there. But once again, a mistake up at Ferragura has cost another driver. Meanwhile, here's Pagenaud still trying to find a way through on Juncadella. He's running out of laps though, as Van Dorn will be coming around soon to start the final lap of the race. And it looks as though Yamamoto has lost even more time to Van Dorn as they come across the line. Indeed he has, it's nearly 2 seconds, so Van Dorn in a very comfortable position on this final lap. It looks as though they played a masterstroke in the strategy. The team managed to leapfrog him ahead of Hanson, and then he had to just go off and attack Rast. And then he's taken that lead and managed to hold off the pressure of Yamamoto on much younger tyres. But it's not over yet. He's passed, well, he's through Desida de Lago. He's now gone through the other much harder corners that we've seen instants at, and he's pretty much, as long as he can carry on and no issues with the car, I feel this is Van Dorn's race to win now. He just has the junction to deal with and then back up the hill one final time. And over round the crest, and it does indeed look as though Stoffel van Dorn wins here in São Paulo. And this is great news for his championship title battle, as he's now managed to close the gap even more at the for the lead. Yamamoto finishes second ahead of Rast. Charles Weerts, another strong race there from the Belgian driver. Kobayashi finishes fifth, and Juncker just about hangs on ahead of Pagenaud. And Hanson, at the moment we're still waiting for him to come through, but he's currently sat in 12th position. So what could have been a good day, or a bit of damage limitation for the championship leader, that mistake has cost him dearly, and is most likely cost him the lead of the championship, if my maths are correct. We wait for the rest of the field to come through. Heidfeld, I believe, the last driver to cross the line, and indeed he is. We're just waiting on the confirmation. Stoffel van Dorn wins in brilliant fashion here in São Paulo ahead of Yamamoto and René Rast in third. Charles Weerts came in fourth position ahead of Kamui Kobayashi, with Daniel Juncker in sixth position. Simon Pagenaud was seventh ahead of Scott Dixon in eighth, and James Collado come through into ninth. Shane van Gisbergen rounds out the top 10 with Robin Freins in 11th, and Philip Hansen managing to come back into 12th position. Alex Palou 13th. Further on down through the order, Jack Aitken managed to finish 14th, with Elvin Evans taking the final point there in 15th. Then we go on to Alex Dunn in 16th, Lee Watcharagu 17th, Paul de Resta 18th, Ella Lloyd was 12th, Cal Kirkwood was 20th, and Nick Heidfeld 21st. We go on to Mac Hussart, who finished a lap down ahead of Joseph Newgarden, who retired but was still classified 4 laps down, and Sandy Stuvik with an accident, Nick de Vries with the puncture, and Bourdais with the electrical failure. Now, big news there for the championship, and I will leave you with Chris to go with the confirmation in the points.
Well, when a title fight is as close as it is, to have a race like this happen just makes things oh so more dramatic, oh so more interesting, and oh so more anxious maybe for some of the team managers and drivers, because that has just been an incredible race and with significant outcomes for the championship. Van Dorn with another victory. Brilliant driver. Yamamoto just plodding away at second place and just making sure that he gets championship points. René Rast doing a great charge. Charles Weerts in his first feature race debut, and a fantastic race. And the Kiwi drivers did the best they could in the situation that they were in to get points. Well done to them. Philip Hansen losing out on points. So much went on, and we can actually now see what it does to the driver standings. And yep, despite not winning a single race this year, sprint nor feature, Naoki Yamamoto leads the championship on 175 points, just 5 ahead of Simon Pagenaud on 170. Philip Hansen falls to third place in the standings on 169. René Rast is fourth, only 9 behind on 166. Scott Dixon 15 behind on 160. Van Gisbergen 20 behind on 155, along with Alex Palou. Stoffel van Dorn now only 22 behind on 153. The top 8 are within 22 points with 2 races to go. How crazy is that? Well, 2 rounds to go, forgive me. 4 races to go, 2 rounds to go. Despite that, it is still crazy close. Kamui Kobayashi on 126.49 behind. Sandy Stuvik on 119.56 behind. Nick de Vries on 115. Joseph Newgarden on 112. Daniel Juncker on 92. And then we have Paul de Resta, the last person to officially be still in it on the championship, on 91 points with 84 behind. The rest of the field are officially out. Robin Freins with 83, Sebastian Bourdais at 79, Alex Dunn 71, Carl Larson 68, James Collado 57, Dries Van Toorn 54, Elfyn Evans at 47, Andre Losser 45, Jack Aitken at 44, Max Hart 34, Nativ Liwatelabaragal on 25 points, Ella Lloyd on 22, and then Charles Wirtz in one race just gets 19 points. Fantastic drive from him. Puts himself ahead of Nick Heidfeld in 12 points, who was the last of the drivers that are currently on the track with points. And now we can see what this does to the nation's standings for Division 1. New Zealand are still in front on 315, but Japan now have really closed that gap to just 9 behind. Bit of a trail away from France on 66 behind on 249 points, with Spain on 247, Germany on 234, Belgium now on 227, who leapfrog both England and the Netherlands. England on 226, Netherlands on 201, USA on 180, and now that gap was previously 11 points, it's now 9 between Thailand and Scotland for the final spot to stay in. Scotland on 135, Ireland on 105, and Wales on 69. Well, that's round 13 in the books. Unlucky for some, lucky for others. Certainly at this racetrack it's been quite a wild affair for a lot of people. But now we head for our next race, which will be in Mexico City at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, same day, same time, in a fortnight's time. Next week we have the Macau Grand Prix, the celebratory race for the final send-off, as it were, for Season 5 of the Grand Prix World Series. Hopefully you are there for that. If not, they will be here in 2 weeks. But until then, thank you so much for watching. I have been Chris Cavan, your host. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator. Merry Christmas to you all. And this is the Retro Racing Managers League signing off.